This video is for the Is It Balanced worksheet. We did this together in class, and the skills we're learning on this worksheet are important skills for students to pass this part of chemistry. So this should help you understand it. Important things we need to know is the number in front of a formula is called a coefficient. And it multiplies everything in a formula. Whereas the little numbers that come after elements are called subscripts. So subscripts apply to the element, they come immediately after, and if we have no subscript, it's a 1. So none is 1 is what we say, and that would apply to the S. So we have one S and two oxygens in this formula, which is SO2. Now, subscripts are part of the formula. They make the substance what it is, and so they can never be changed if we're trying to balance an equation. Never change. You have to leave those subscripts alone. Now the coefficient applies to the entire formula. That is telling us how much we have of this particular substance, and it can be changed. All right, I'm not going to go through more of this right here at the top because I covered this in the Counting Atoms and Ions worksheet. And we're going to go ahead and go on down to the bottom. And so the bottom is where we're looking at equations, and we're learning to count atoms and ions in the reactants and the products. So reactants are on the left side. Products are on the right. And the arrow in the middle means yields or produces. All right, so what I mean by balancing is we want to make sure we have the same number and kinds of atoms in the reactants that we have in the products. Otherwise, our reaction is impossible because it doesn't follow the law of conservation of mass. So the first thing I'm going to do is count what I have, and I'm going to do it on the reactant side first by setting each of the different atoms or ions equal to its subscript. So Ca has no subscript, so that's a 1. When we have something in parentheses, that's a polyatomic ion, and we look outside the parentheses at that number. So OH is going to be a 2. Then I look to see if there are any coefficients, and I have a coefficient of 3, so I'm going to multiply this by 3 and this by 3. So it's going to end up being equal to 3 and 6 as the total amount of those two ions. Then I go over to my next formula. Coefficients only apply to one formula. They do not cross plus signs. So this is separate. It has, we could say no coefficient, but it's actually a 1. We just don't write the 1. And we're going to look at our subscripts first, though. Fe is a 1, and Cl is a 3. Now, because I don't have a coefficient there, I'm not going to multiply by anything, and these are my totals on that side. Now I'm going to go to the product side and figure out what I have over here. For calcium, my subscript is a 1 again, and for Cl, which is down here, it's a 2. I have a coefficient of 3, and that is going to apply just to this formula. I'm going to multiply this by 3, so I have 3 calciums, and this by 3, which means I'll end up with 6 chlorides. Then I go to the next formula, and I have Fe with no subscript, so that's a 1. And OH, I'm going to look outside again. I have a 3, so OH is equal to 3. I also have a coefficient for this one. Oh, I forgot to circle this one. All right, that's a 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2 here to get 6. and by 2 here to get 2. All right, now my list is in the same order on both sides, and I'm going to compare and see if my equation is balanced. 3 calciums on both sides, 6 hydroxides, but wait, 1 iron here and 2 here, 3 chlorides here and 6 here. So this equation is not balanced. I have more of some things on this side than the other. So all I'm going to do for this worksheet is just circle unbalanced. All right, so you can stop watching this at any time you understand. I'm going to go through a few more. And so the next one we're going to do is up here at the top. And I'm going to use the same process again. I'm going to count by setting equal to subscripts. Remember, element symbols are a capital and lowercase or just a capital. So we have AG and I. Those are the two elements. AG is equal to 1 and I is equal to 1. Then I have a coefficient of 2 in this case. So I'm going to multiply both of these by 2. All right, then I go over to the next formula, right? We don't carry the 2 over here and multiply anything because our plus signs put up the wall. Those are separate substances with separate coefficients. All right, so Na is equal to 2 and S is equal to 1. We have no coefficient for that formula, so those are our totals, 2 and 1. Now I'm going to go to the other side, and over here I've got Ag equal to 2 and S down here is equal to 1. No coefficient for this formula, so I'm done on those two. And I look at the next formula. Na, no coefficient, or I'm sorry, no subscript, so that's a 1. I has no subscript, that's a 1. We have a coefficient for this whole formula, so it's going to multiply both things in the formula. So that's going to be times 2 is equal to 2, and times 2 is equal to 2. Now I'm going to compare 2 silvers, 2 iodides, 2 sodiums, and 2 sulfides, or 1 sulfide on both sides. So this equation is balanced. All right, I'm going to do B, and then I'm going to skip down to the bottom. All right, and that will be it. The bottom one, E, is really tough, and I think if you've gotten this far with me, then you'll be able to make it. All right, so once again, we're going to set them equal to their subscripts. Na is a 3. Now, this one's a little tricky. I said look outside the parentheses when we have these polyatomic ions. If there is no subscript, then it is a 1. All right, so we don't care about anything inside the parentheses. We're just going to set this whole thing equal to 1. That means we have 1 copy of PO4. All right, no coefficient there, so those are my totals. Then I look at the HCl. H is equal to 1 because there's no subscript. Cl is equal to 1 because there's no subscript. I have a coefficient of 2 in front of that formula, which is going to multiply everything in the formula. So that's going to be times 2 is equal to 2, and times 2 is equal to 2. All right, now I go to the product side, and Na is equal to 1, Cl is equal to 1. I've got a coefficient of 3, so I'm going to multiply both of these times 3. And I'm done with that one. I go over to the H3PO4. H is equal to 3. PO4, once again, no subscript outside the parentheses, so that is equal to 1. I also have no coefficient on that one, so I'm not multiplying, and I just circle my totals. So now we'll go down our list and compare. Na, 3 on both sides. PO4, 1 on both sides. H, we have 2 on the reactant side and 3 on the product. Cl, we have 2 on the reactant side and 3 on the product. So that does not work. That means this is an unbalanced equation. All right, so I'm not going to go over C and D. I think you can probably figure those out on your own. Sometimes students ask me if they have to show their work. These days I say no. If you can go straight to the total for each element, then just go ahead and do it. Just make sure that you understand the process because it's very easy to get confused. All right, now looking at this one at the bottom, which is a little bit tricky, and you will see why in a minute. All right, so same thing again where we count what we have. So let me just make sure I'm completely in the frame here. All right, so I got FE equal to 1, S is equal to 1. Both of those are times 4. Oxygen is equal to 2, and then that one is times 7 for a total of 14. All right, so that side is done. Oh, and circle my coefficients, right? Those were my multipliers. Now, going over to the other side, Fe is equal to 2, O is equal to 3, and I am going to multiply by the 2. So times 2 equals 4, that's looking good. Times 2 is equal to 3, or I'm sorry, equal to 6. Wait, no, I can't circle this because there's oxygen here too. All right, so we're going to talk about what to do in that situation. That's supposed to be a 6 then. All right, so let's go over to this next formula. It also has oxygen. How do we handle that? All right, so first sulfur is equal to 1. And then for oxygen, what I'm going to do is put another oxygen down here, all right? Because I got to handle this one separately because it is a separate coefficient, so it has a separate multiplier. All right, so this oxygen is equal to 2 initially. That is its subscript, right? So I set it equal to its subscript. Then I'm going to take that coefficient of 4, multiply sulfur by it here for a total of 4 sulfurs. And just this oxygen gets multiplied by 4, so that's going to equal 8. Now I can add together oxygen from both of these formulas because I'm looking at the total amount of oxygen in the product. That's what I want to know in order to figure out if I have a balanced equation that follows the law of conservation of mass. All right, so if I add 6 and 8 together, I do get 14. That means if I compare both sides, I have 4 iron on each side, 4 sulfur on each side, and 14 oxygen on each side. All right, so hopefully that helped you out in understanding how to figure out if an equation is balanced. And the next step then is just to take an equation which is a skeleton equation and has no coefficients and learn how to balance it. And we're doing that on another worksheet. All right, see you in class.